Last April, I was at Bournemouth University where the Association for Psychosocial Studies organized a conference titled Psychosocial Reflection on a Half Century of Cultural Revolution. Between keynote speaker, there was Lynn Segal, Liz Frost, Gail Hughes, and others. From Essex University, Andrew Samuels, Mark Saban, Ellen Wang, Anna Milashevich, and myself presented our own work or papers. I would like today to talk about my research project, actually to look into two aspects of my research. One, the II, therefore individuation in an individualized society, as a psychosocial model aimed to understand the nature of development of narrative of self-identity in the 21st century, and the fact that Jung could be, perhaps, considered as a pioneer of psychosocial studies. I propose a merge of Jung individuation and Ulrich Beck individualization into a new concept which I call the II. The II is an attempt to frame the study of the nature of development of narrative of self-identity at the beginning of 21st century, applying a psychosocial model. And it is an attempt to repair the false myth considering that the fact that in contemporary Western society people can become what they want. Let's look into some definition now. What means individuation? What is individualization? What is an I-modern, E-modern society? According to Jung, individuation is the process in which the patient becomes what he really is. It is one-on identification with the totality of the psyche, of the personality, with the self. A process of differentiation having for its goal the development of the individual personality. Thus, individuation is a time when the individual is a point of intersection or a dividing line, neither conscious nor unconscious, but a bit of both. Individualization is a concept which describes a structural sociological transformation of social institution and the relationship of the individual to society. Individualization means institutional individualism, therefore no longer Parsons' idea of a linear self-reproducing system, but rather the paradox of an individualizing structure as a non-linear, open-ended, highly ambivalent, ongoing process, and is related to the decline of narrative of given sociability. Important to underline is that Beck claims that we live in an age in which the social order of the nation-state, the class, ethnicity, and the traditional family is in decline, where the ethic of individual self-fulfillment and achievement is the most powerful currently in modern society. The choosing, deciding, shaping human being who aspire to be the author of his or her own life, the creator of an individual identity, is the central character of our time. Beck claims that in second modernity, when individualizing, people become homo optionis, where life, death, gender, corporality, identity, religion, marriage, parenthood, social ties are all becoming decidable down to the small print. When individualizing, therefore, everything must be decided, Jung claimed in 2002. In 1993, Irving Welsh, should we consider him as the most important sociologist of the 20th century, wrote, "Choose life, choose job, choose a career, choose a family. Choose life? But why would I want to do a thing like that?" What is an I-modern, E-modern society? It takes into account the concept of modernity and what Beck calls reflexive modernization, or second modernity, what Giddens calls high or late modernity, and what Zygmunt Bauman calls liquid modernity. I make a link between second, late, reflexive, liquid modernity and what Marcuse called advanced industrial society, contextualizing it within current electronic and technological society. Therefore, an I-modern, E-modern society is an advanced electronic society. This could also be called post-biblical society, that is a post-class, post-gender society per se, wherein biblical metaphors could no longer serve as guidance, and people therefore sought new form of guidance, leading to increased wealth and loss of symbols and their meanings. Now, let's look at the II. We do so taking into account that, according to Beck, people have become liberated from traditional social ties and are now free to decide who to be and to become. And that, according to Jung, individuation not only means transforming consciousness into a mirror with no fixed content or features of identification, therefore into a more or less pure eye of conscious awareness. It is also a process of development that emerges through time in small but steady increments. Therefore, the II is an attempt to claim that, to become themselves, therefore free, in an modern advanced electronic society, people need to individuate once being individualized. The II takes back individualization theory as a valid picture of our age and merges it with Jung's individuation process. The novelty of such research might introduce a new configuration of psychosocial studies, wherein Jung used to consider the psychic and Beck the social aspects. I propose that in employing a psychosocial approach which examines the ways in which psychic experience and social life are fundamentally entangled, it would be better to examine both the theater stage and the actor's play. Therefore, I am to demonstrate that traditional sociology is not equipped to take into account the unconscious, not even when it misuses Freud's work, and especially looking at Marcuse's Eros and Civilization and Beck, and the Polity Press circle. I claim that it is not sufficient merely to adopt a Freudian sociology, as in classical drive theory, or a post-Freudian sociology, and that Jung's immense contribution must also be considered, without, however, claiming that Jung's approach is sufficient on its own. This, too, would be a mistake. Instead, I propose that Jung and the post-Jungians be studied alongside Freud and the post-Freudians, as well as alongside all major contributions in the field. Therefore, I claim that the II's psychosocial approach to the study of the nature of development of narrative of self-identity is necessary for a number of different reasons. First, because it is an approach to conflict that tries to reconcile differences without imposing false synthesis on them, and above all, without losing sight of the particular value and truth of each element in the conflict, as underlined by Samuel in 1989. Second, the fact that the individual is born into a set of social and psychological circumstances. The human infant is a set of possibility not ID-based, not instinctively driven, but in order to become recognized as a human, will need to attach, as underlined by Orbach in 2014. Third, because psychosocial studies seek to investigate the ways in which psychic and social processes demand to be understood as always implicated in each other, as mutually constitutive, co-produced, or abstracted levels of a single dialectic process, as underlined by Frosch in 2014. Second, psychosocial object, the idea of thinking separately about psychological and social processes, and then examining the way they intersect with each other. Frosch, 2014. This last point explains in detail why what I am to do with my own II, and the merging of the psychic, Jung, and the social, Beck, in the 21st century. Following Beck, different authors have worked on the concept of individualization at the edge of the 21st century and the beginning of the 21st century. It is not my interest to review these authors that follow Beck, Giddens, or Bauman, although to quote Nicholas Rose is fundamental to state the mistake that possibly we are trapped in. In my opinion, he is worth to mention because his quote explained the false myth whereby people can become what they want. The mistake wrongly transformed Beck recognition that in current society individuals are homo optionis into become what you want, which in my opinion is manic. Rose, in 1998, page 158, wrote, "Become whole, become what you want, become yourself. The individual is to become, as it were, an entrepreneur of itself, seeking to maximize its own powers, its own happiness, its own quality of life, though enhancing its autonomy and then instrumentalizing its autonomous choice in the service of its lifestyle." Jung claims that we have to become who we authentically are. To become whole is one thing. To become what you want is another thing. The two are antithetic. On this antithesis, I build my idea and my thesis, where thesis and antithesis will form the base for a third, the II. I therefore claim that in current advanced electronic society, that is a society where people believe they can become what they want, whatever they want, people live in a manic illusion. Freud claimed that religion was an illusion. Marx claimed that religion was opium of the people. Nowadays, we must take into account a new illusion, the fact that in a post-biblical society, people's illusion is to become what they want. With the I propose that to become whole means to look into yourself and to really understand what you are, therefore, what your true longing and desires are, as well as your limitations. I claim that those hoping to become what they want might get trapped in false desires and longings, following Winnicott, being unable to distinguish between true and false longings and desires. I sense that the link between true and false is compensation, both from the Jungian and Adlerian point of view. This is underlined by Orbach when she underlines that being is constituted out of the enactment and living of both conscious behavior and behavior of which we are unaware. 2014, page 17. I claim that when examining the points by Frosch above, a connection can be found between Jung's thinking and psychosocial studies. Thus, I wish to consider Jung as a pioneer of psychosocial studies. This is because, employing Provorov, 1955-161, Jung perceived that the human psyche cannot function without a culture, and no individual is possible without society. Moreover, he claimed, Jung makes it his principle that all analysis must start from the primary fact of the social nature of man. Hence, Frosch claims that in examining the ways in which the psychological and the social are intermingled, psychosocial studies might rule out a lot of traditional psychological and sociological approaches and terminology. Therefore, it questions tradition and dogma, which is what Jung did when distancing from Freud. Second, both Jung's approach and psychosocial studies are transdisciplinary and hence have no disciplinary location. Frosch, 2014, 164. From a first look, it could be said that these areas have nothing to do with Jung or his approach. I sense that this first assumption is wrong because Jung tried to find a method at the beginning of the 20th century to help people better understand themselves and ultimately found his own method that steered away from the pathologizing attitude of psychoanalysis. The same goes for psychosocial studies, and into archetypes, myth, and the collective unconscious. I sense that psychosocial studies does the same in a post-biblical society where symbols have lost their traditional meaning and role in society. Another link stems from the fact that both Jung and psychosocial studies are interested in criticizing any existing traditional discipline or approach. This, Frosch underline, page 164, is a liberating idea that allows in studies that are rooted in an existing discipline but strives to push away from it. Jung had the same view. On Jung's side, we have alchemy versus drive theory, while on psychosocial studies, we have feminism, queer theory, and post-colonial studies versus the traditional psychological and sociological traditions. A third point, perhaps the most important, which clearly shows the link between Jung and psychosocial studies, is that both look with interest at how affect, emotion, the irrational, and the unconscious condition people's life. The fact that psychosocial studies does not examine this merely from a psychoanalytic point of view reminds me of Jung's wish to look beyond medicine, psychiatry, and psychoanalytical drive theory into, to mention just two, the psychological implication of alchemy and synchronicity, which are not psychoanalytical concepts per se. Therefore, both Jung and psychosocial studies investigate and try to integrate the rational and irrational side of the psyche. Conclusions. What is the best tool to understand the nature of development of narrative of self-identity at the beginning of the 21st century? I claim that to better understand the current world as it is, and also to provide a response to Beck's latest work titled The Metamorphosis of the Word, 2017, there is the imminent necessity to build a bridge from sociology toward psychoanalysis, to leave behind traditional sociology in order to open the door to the unconscious, with a psychosocial approach. These lead me to ask, keeping in mind Beck's thesis, whether in second modernity people have become liberated from traditional social ties and are now free to decide who to be and to become, that is, why are people not yet free? This, in my opinion, is the main reason for bridging Beck's individualization to Jung's individuation and not vice versa. Therefore, the fact that to become free, we have to individuate once individualized. The I could be seen, from my point of view, as a psychosocial model. To conclude, I would like to clarify the reason why I think that the I is a psychosocial model. Key to understand the narratives of self-identity in the 21st century at the bridge of conscious and unconscious materials. I just introduced Jung's individuation process as well as Beck's individualization theory. I propose my own I based on the merge of these two authors. Therefore, I examine Jung's role as a pioneer of psychosocial studies. This has allowed me to claim that the I as a psychosocial model looks beyond traditional psychology, psychoanalysis, and sociology in contemporary 21st century advanced electronic society. I ought also to show that my own I psychosocial model is based on the following pillars. 1. It connects theory and clinical work, therefore helping to prove the accuracy and efficacy of analytical work with patients. 2. It is transdisciplinary. 3. It is pluralistic, drawing from Samuel's 1989, and demonstrates an attitude of inclusion to replace the split and separation typical of the history of psychoanalysis. These also link with relational psychoanalysis. It starts from the premise that the individual is born into a set of social and psychological circumstances, drawing from Orbach, 2014. It investigates the ways in which psychic and social processes demand to be understood as always implicated in each other, Frosch, 2014. It has an emphasis on affect, the irrational, and unconscious processes, often but not necessarily understood psychoanalytically, Frosch, 2014. It offers a conflict relational approach and stresses the need for continuous adaptation in the process of becoming who people are authentically, Orbach, 2014. Becoming, in this model, becoming who people authentic are, is seen as liberation, Watkins, 2003. An analysis, point 9, is framed as accompaniment, based on co-construction and multiplicity of meaning, as underlined by Watkins in 2013. 10. A lifeline or perception of direction made in the present moment, and it looks ahead, not backward. It indicates the direction of the current libido at the present time. Since these currents are fluid and constantly shifting direction, as underlined by Murstein, the perceived lifeline must be held as temporary. It only hints at what may possibly be unfolding and where the libido is heading. This orientation to the future is what Jung would call the perspective orientation of the psyche. This function of the psyche is not teleological in a sense of creating a definite fate or preordained destiny. It only suggests what may be possible and forthcoming in the immediate future by way of libido direction. Thank you.